Hey, it's the Comic Artist Pro Secrets channel. I'm Ethan Van Sciver. Just
Allergy fit, sorry.
That's okay.
Fall allergies.
I've got them too. I'm just a humble ink and superhero merchant. Here's another one. Another humble ink and superhero merchant. This is Billy Tucci, living legend. Billy, we're going to talk about Shi, Way of the Warrior #1. Is that okay?
I think that would be pretty fantastic.
So what we've got here is we've got a reprint of the very first issue of Shi, right?
Yes, we do. What's cool is that this is a sketch cover, and it was made specifically for the Paris Comic Con, and it's a reprint. It's 20 years later. But what's so cool about it is that this original comic that's inside of this cover is what was launched 1,000 ships, if you will. And because of this comic, I was able to do a comic convention in Paris. They flew me and my wife in, and we were guests and treated us like a king and a queen. And that's all because of the contents which was inside of this book.
So let's talk about the year that
Yeah, and the year is 1994. When it came out. She was released in March. I think it shipped the last week in March, 1994, or the 23rd of March, I think, 94 it shipped. Or was in stores, one or the other. And it exploded. We had initial orders of 37,000 copies, and I somehow was able to convince my printer to do 50,000, but I had no money. But I think I was so enthusiastic about it, I was able to get this book printed. The year before, I probably made in total maybe $6,000 doing freelance, doing Betty Boop t-shirts and things like that, and a lot of children's wear. And another funny thing about this book, though, is that I met Fred Pierce at Valiant, who was at Valiant at the time, on a chance meeting, and he loved the work. And he was able to call Spartan Printing in Sparta, Illinois, and had them print this book for me for nothing.
Wow.
I mean, I had to pay them, of course, when it was done, but without paying them. And I owe a great debt to Fred, and he's become a great friend over the years.
Let's crack this open. Let's talk about it.
Okay, now again, you have to understand this is their version of it. This book was made. It's not. It is all the original pages, which was colored by my friend Barry Orkin, who used Doc Martens dyes and some watercolors and perhaps some gouache. So the reproduction isn't as good as the first one, but you still can get it. You can get an idea of it. And this was a scandal because I had her meditating in the nude. And apparently one didn't do that back then, and mainstream comics are, for the most part, in I guess mainstream accepted independent comics, and threw a lot of stuff in from Swanzoo, and this is from Taekwondo, who's another strategist, and the first line of Shi. I haven't read this in forever. Enliven the mind without dwelling on anything, to achieve the way. The mind must be focused, it must be free. So now I have her dreaming, and of course she's naked. Oops, sorry.
Let's get on my pen.
And again, this was, oh my God, people lost their minds. But the book did well. A little Hokusai reference is a huge influence on me. Japanese woodblocks is a huge influence on me.
Yeah, we've seen you do this again.
I did
Justice
that.
League
Yes,
cover.
I did the Justice League #15 cover using that. And it's just such an iconic image, and it's just what a graphic. It's timeless, and you give him due credit where credit is due, of course. And Arashi, it means storm in Japanese, and you find out that he is the antagonist of the story, Masahiro Arashi, Yakuza boss. And Anna, you also notice Anna has green eyes. I made her Amerasian, and the main reason why I made her Amerasian and gave her green eyes is for color. So I can add another color to it. So I think, green eyes will look nicer than brown eyes in a colored book. If I'm doing all this color and paying for this color I can't afford, why not use as much colors as possible?
So talk about your process back then. Did you use a lot of reference? What were the tools that you were using back then?
I did. I mostly posed like my wife today, my girlfriend back at the time, that she would pose for me, and I'd wake her up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "Honey, I need you to come down here and pose." I have great photos of that too, of her looking pretty miserable. But another interesting thing is how I draw, being left-handed. When I start a page, I lay it out as a rough on Xerox paper, and then I always put it over a light box. and then I'll literally just clean it all up on the light box, and then I'll proceed to ink it. Here at this time, we were using inkers, but I was never happy with them. I felt that a lot was lost when other people had inked my book until I met Michael Baer, interestingly enough, and Mike Baer was fantastic. He's a virtuoso inker, and I don't think my works ever looked as good with Mike Baer, but I didn't know anyone at this point.
So these aren't your inks, or
They
are
are
they?
not my. Well, some of them are. I inked a lot of it,
Okay.
but I hired an inker, and he actually held the pages. Even though the agreement was that he would do it on spec, and I would pay him. Maybe I paid him $200, but about 2 weeks before the book was supposed to ship, and I was doing these pages as they came in, he held them hostage for like $4,000 or something, whatever it was, $2,000, and I had to scrounge around to all my friends to scrounge some money to pay him, or he wouldn't give me my pages back.
Wow. Yikes.
And that's why he only inked one and only issue of She. And then when She exploded, I guess he was a little, where's some new pages? I'm like, yeah, I'll get them to you.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't have done that to you.
You're right. And then another thing I did, which was a little different, we did the pages. I'm a huge fan of Alphonse Mucha, so I was able to round the pages, and as the book went on, as we started to actually connect them, which is a nice subliminal way of people to follow the pages, the panels through.
Very cool.
So, and then now we bring her back to her weapons room. She's in her apartment. Again, oh, so tantalizing with the legs, and I remember Debbie posing for that, and that as well. And I would just take what you call it, Polaroids.
Yeah.
I had a Polaroid camera, and I remember, it was at one of a photography place in New York City. I'm from Long Island, but I lived in the city after college and during college, and it was like one of them photography places, J&M or something like that, and they had a huge sale on Polaroid film. Because even you're talking 1990s, if not 93, no one's really using them anymore. So I bought packages and packages of them. So I have all these great Polaroids of my wife posing, and then of course she grabs the swords, and
So
just nice, just fun stuff. I wanted to give and what I love about Barry's coloring as well, and it almost has a stained glass appearance to it.
Oh, this
Which
background.
it was really beautiful, and we were just kids having a lot of fun with it. And then
So
the
here we
iconic,
go.
the iconic image, which I went in and touched up with colored pencil, because it was too bland, and I needed it to pop. Another interesting thing here is that this is not the original face. I drew the face, and it was inked, and it didn't come. The inking didn't. The way I inked it didn't come out as well. I inked this image. And I had to take the cover image, the cover, and I shrunk it down on the Xerox machine, and I pasted it on. So that's the same face as on the cover.
So tell me about how this costume came about.
Yeah, the character originally started as a man, and a male character, and I remember trying to pitch it to other publishers. I pitched it to a company called Triumphant Comics. I pitched it to Defiant, I think. Couple of these other people, and they were all like, girl books don't sell. If we do publish this book, we own 50% of the character. Another one was, you'll start getting royalties when we have sales of over 50,000 copies. And I was like, the hell with these guys. I'll do my own book. Mm-hmm. So, getting back to the costume, I just found this really great quilting in Japanese woodblock prints. A lot of samurai wore the quilting underneath their armor and all. And I thought it was functional. Of course, I was a young, hot-blooded young man, so I wanted something a little sexy, a little ninja-esque or whatever. And that's pretty much how it came about. It's armored up here with the quilting, and then, of course, to make it look good. I came up with this character in 1990. I designed her. So think back then. It's before the whole X-Men explosion, Jim Lee, the whole thing, but it still had that 90s feel or late 80s feel. And
it doesn't feel dated, though, does it?
I don't think it does. I mean, we have the new book. I'm coming out with a new book in 2018 called She, Return of the Warrior. And it's going to be 20 years after this. So now Anna will be a mom. She'll be, and her warrior days are far behind her, and then it all comes back. And I will have a fun part of her trying on this costume, like, how the hell did I ever get my leg into this, or ripping it, or something like that.
That's a great
idea. And, she wears the She coin is the choker, which you learn later on is that Masahiro Arashi, the man who had slain her family, left it as a calling card, a coin. and which showed that that was his moniker for his whatever they are, his assaults on fellow crime families or whatever. And she basically, the She story is, to get to it, is that Anna is a soldier in a war that's existed for 1,000 years. It's a battle between the Sohai warriors, which are the descendants of the warrior monks, and the samurai, and a lot of the samurai ended up becoming the Yakuza. So this shadow war has transitioned over to the arts, to politics, to business, and she's a soldier in it. She's drafted into this war that she has no stake in whatsoever, aside from go do this. They killed your father, and now you have to. It's a vengeance story, and she's not a vengeance type character.
She has honor.
Yeah, I try to have the whole thing about honor and faith, and the conflicting duality of a character or of anyone's life, and we've done pretty well with it.
Yeah, I really appreciate your talking about this is the beginning of a comic book success story.
Yeah.
People ask all the time, how do I break into comics? This is kind of how to do it. The best case scenario, I mean, you put in 6 or 7 months into drawing.
Yeah, probably a year. Probably a year.
A year into drawing your first issue. That you don't need to do that, listeners. I mean, go ahead and just put a book out. But for goodness sakes, I mean, this is kind of a rags to riches kind of story in comics. Billy became the biggest thing in the 1990s and started something called the bad girl trend, which was nonstop. It was a nonstop money machine. Fans loved it. I remember watching it from my position as artist of Cyberfrog. I was doing the wrong book at the wrong time, and it was phenomenal. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for listening. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell underneath. You'll get notifications about new videos immediately, and also live sketch videos. And we'll see you again next time. Thanks again, Billy.
Thank you, Ethan. Tally ho, all.